The first thing that I judge a smart community by is how easy is it to set up myself in a new place, and what facilities are there, what infrastructure is there, where are the doctors, where are all the facilities, where are the sporting grounds, etc., etc. So that's at a micro level for me, and of course the people involved in it. How easy is it to just go, I need my water connected, my electricity. So at its most basic, that's to me a smart community.
Hi, smart community friends. In this episode of the Smart Community Podcast, I have a fabulous chat with Nicci Rossouw, who is the CEO and founder of Exaptec, a robotics company that specialises in telepresence, social and educational robots. Nicci starts off by telling us about her professional background in sales and her passion for robotics. She then tells us what a smart community is to her before discussing how she got into the robotic space. Nicci then tells us a bit more about her company and the work they do, as well as about her podcast, Let's Talk Robotics, and how she showcases and celebrates people and their businesses in the robotics and artificial intelligence or AI space. We discuss the value in different expertise and the importance of harnessing those expertise in smart communities before we discuss how automation can enhance businesses and how technology is changing our society. We finish our chat discussing the emerging trends of AI and robotics and the positive impacts they can have on our communities. As always, we hope you enjoy listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
Welcome to the smart community, smart regions, smart towns, and smart cities. It's where we live, work, and play. With smart communities, the future starts today. Big data, smart mobility, emerging trends galore. The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.
Well, hello, Nicci. Welcome to the Smart Community Podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today.
Thank you, Zoe, and thank you for the invitation to be on your podcast.
Well, let's just jump straight in. And can you tell us about your background and what you're passionate about?
Sure. So my background is obviously a foreigner with this very Australian accent that I have. I was actually asked the other day, when did I arrive? And I said, well, actually 26 years ago. And this person was absolutely flabbergasted. So unfortunately, I don't think the accent's going to change. I've lived in Bunbury in West Australia, then moved to Perth, and then moved to Sydney, and now I live in Melbourne, where I am the founder and CEO of Exaptec. It's a robotics company that specialises in telepresence, social and educational robots. And what am I passionate about? Well, first off, my adult children, I'm passionate about them, and then it flows from there. So obviously the work I do in robotics, I'm very passionate about that. Like you, I've got a podcast, Let's Talk Robotics, and I'm busy organising January 22, which is an AI and robotics conference next year in Melbourne, which I'm hoping to have you at, by the way, that you don't know. But yes, that's what I'm hoping to do. So that's basically what I'm focusing my time on at the moment.
Excellent. And yes, we'll put the link in the show notes so people can click away and find your podcast as well, because we always love new podcasts in our playlists. So thanks for that. Now, we'll go high level and talk about what is a smart community to you.
Okay, so I was trying to remember in preparation for this chat with you how many times I've moved, but I think it's basically over 25 times in my life. And as recently as a month ago, I, in the midst of COVID, actually relocated from my family home in Sassafras in Melbourne to a suburb close by. And actually the first thing that I judge a smart community by is how easy is it to set up myself in a new place, and what facilities are there, what infrastructure is there, where are the doctors, where are all the facilities, where are the sporting grounds, etc., etc. So that's at a micro level for me, and of course the people involved in it. How easy is it to just go, I need my water connected, my electricity. So at its most basic, that's to me a smart community. And let me tell you, having lived in South Africa and all my family living there still, I can tell you there's nothing smart about their communities. It's an absolute nightmare to move and to reconnect basic things like water and light. So I think in Australia, we're very lucky at how well our communities are set up here. and how easy it is to do that. Because imagine if you're someone that's moving a lot, and every time you move and you realize and you're reconnecting your basic things, it takes you 10 days. Like, it's a nightmare. So I think smart communities basically from there. And then, of course, then it goes to, the infrastructure, the digital, how well advanced is that? But I think if you've got smart communities and you look at people that come out of communities that are well set up, there's good infrastructure, there's good social support networks for people, there are lots of clubs that they can belong to. I think this impacts positively on communities. And really, I think at a basic level, that's where my focus would be, and that's the emphasis for me on a smart community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that basic need and those services that, a lot of the times we take for granted if we have always had access to them, but it depends on our circumstances. It depends where we've moved, where we've come from, how we've been able to set that up and that type of thing. But actually having that integrated, streamlined approach is really key. And I think sometimes people, we want to talk about advanced technologies and all those type of things. Obviously, you talk a lot about that stuff in robotics, but at the end of the day, if we can't, access those basic things, then we can't be smart because we can't build on that. So I think it's a really great point. Thanks for bringing that to the podcast. Now, you're in robotics now, and I'm keen to know about your professional background. How did you end up here?
Zoe, my husband and I actually had a agile consultancy business called Tabar, and the business still exists in Melbourne. And part of what I did was bringing together conferences and speakers and trainers from overseas. And one of these conferences, which was ironically a workplace happiness conference of all things, we decided to try new technology in terms of communication and, more importantly, independent devices that could move around. And we found the double robot. We bought one, and it was such a great success when we trialed it at the conference. We decided to buy 15 more, which I promptly sold. And my husband, who had great foresight, registered Exaptec, which is an acronym from Extreme Application Technology. And had we known it was going to be such a tongue twist, it could have been ABC robots, but never mind. And he basically said to me, here, this is yours, off you go. So my professional background, I was in sales. I've done a real estate agent's course amongst many other qualifications in Australia. And I just basically took it from there. I have to say my first 2 years of running Exaptec was a very slow start, because my way of running a business was, well, I get an email, I responded to it, and I'm running a business. For all those other startups out there, I'm sure you know what I mean, but I've been going for 7 years now, so I think things have slightly evolved, and part of it was also going on a program with QUT as a startup, so like really good mentorship. I was the oldest there, and I had Scott Miller was the youngest, so like great juxtaposition of the ages and things, but I actually learned a lot there. And, for yourself, you're also a startup, or I think you classify yourself still as a startup land. It's a tough journey. So, there's a lot to learn. We were just talking before the podcast, like I basically do everything, but, it's lean and mean, and that's the name of the game. So, so not an engineer of any sort or anything, but I have great respect for engineers and the way their brains work, because you are a breed unto yourself. And I'm sure you'll take that as a compliment, as which it's intended.
Thank you. Yes, definitely do. It's interesting because, I love doing the podcast because I get to talk to so many different people from so many different backgrounds, and bringing in those professional backgrounds, even like you're saying, all those skills that you've developed over the years, you bring that into what you're doing now. I think about some of the skills that I have developed over the last even 1 year or 2 years. It would be great if I had those 5 years ago, because things would look different, but also we can't go back in time. But I do think that it's not just professional qualifications, formal qualifications that build that. And even, starting a business is a whole beast in its own, let alone trying to do something that's, different and innovative and new. So, I think it's great. Tell us about Exaptec.
Exaptec, yeah. So you don't actually, I say to people, the best way to pronounce is don't look at it, just roll. Just go Exaptec. Because if you start taking it syllable by syllable, they break it up into weird and wonderful things, but it's fine. I just roll with it anyway. So as I said, we're a robotics company, and we've got a very niche focus on the robotics that I deal with, and it's telepresence. And for your listeners that don't know what that is, it's in its most basic form. It's an iPad on a stand, and it's got a movable base, and you can control it via Wi-Fi from anywhere in the world. So if you're sitting in Switzerland and you needed to attend my conference in Melbourne, you could just dial in via the telepresence. And it's what the beauty about it is it's the fully independence and autonomy about it. So if I've set it to auto answer, I don't even have to worry about controlling it from that aspect. And my guest in Switzerland can drive around, talk to people, and it's been used now, of course, during COVID at weddings. It's been used at funerals, conferences. Like I had a huge conference of an international company that brought together guests from Japan and all over Australia just before we in Melbourne, because that's where I'm based, went into our now infamous lockdown that we've just basically coming out of now. So then I've got a robot that deals with kids with or assists children with autism, and it's a robot that educates them and prepares them for the world that they're living in. So it's got a curriculum designed with it. It's a fabulous little robot called the QT robot, and I'm the distributor in Australia for that. So like these robots are like they're fabulous, Zoe, like the difference they make in people's lives. You know, whether it's kids with ongoing illnesses that can't go to school or people with disabilities, like it's a range of people that work with these robots. And that's what I do. So, and just going on from there, then, of course, my podcast started, which I focus on the Australian community predominantly about the wonderful people we have in robotics and AI here. That's the depth of maturity is just astounding. And these people just go about their business so quietly, you don't even know about them. Like that always just amazes me. I go, you need a trumpet blower and I will be it for you. So I celebrate these people in the work that they do here.
Yeah, it's so true. There's like so much happening around the place. And yeah, we do need those. We need the trumpet blowers. We need people to go, hey, this is really cool. Let's tell people about it. Because what that does is one gets their story out there, so then people can, you know, celebrate that person and be like there's that aspect of it, but also there's the collaboration aspect of it. If we don't know what we don't know, then we don't know who we can collaborate with as well. And then the other element is inspiring other young people to get involved too. Because if we think, oh, well, you know, robot, oh, that's too hard, or oh, that must be someone really smart, or that's only one type of person, wouldn't be me because I don't look like that or whatever, because I've only seen, you know, the people on TV or whatever the case is or on the news, then, yeah, you like select out of that. And I think it's important that if we can start to hear these different stories of people doing different things, we can inspire other people, and not just young people, like young people, obviously, but other people to shift careers. Maybe they always wanted to go into it, but they never were able to due, you know, life circumstances, whatever the case is. And I think we're seeing that more and more, and particularly since COVID as well, that people are starting to reevaluate where they want to be. And I was going to say who they want to be with, but that's not what I meant.
Listen, that's in the mix as well. I've heard of a lot of COVID divorces, but listen, you're so right in what you're saying. And I think, you know, I've been following your journey on LinkedIn, and I met you a few years ago, and I think you as an example for, as an engineer out there being an example for other people. You have to, it's good to see what people are doing. And as you said, like if you told me this was what I was going to be doing 10 years ago, I would have just said no ways, because I've been told, I shouldn't say it, but I'm not technical. I am of a sorts technical now because I've been doing this for 7 years. So I do know more than the average non-technical person, but I'm not an engineer. You know, if I need some software development done, I know who I can ask, you know, or if there's something wrong with my hardware, the guy that works for me, Kishan, who's absolutely fantastic, is doing his PhD in robotics. So like I've got those bases covered. I've got another skill set that I bring to the table. So
yes, and that is so important, and something that you've probably heard me bang on about a lot in the smart community space. And because we need all those people, and you don't have to be everything. You can't, you physically can't, mentally can't be everything to everybody. And if you try and shift if you think that you must have the technical skill and therefore I can't even be involved in this if I don't have that, then you lose all these other really fantastic skills that you have. I mean, thinking about it, like as an engineer, I lost a lot of my creativity when I first started because I thought I had to be strict and straight and whatever else, this very good engineer who didn't have personality or something. I mean, I didn't quite not have personality. That couldn't quite get jammed out of me. But I definitely lost creativity and wouldn't explore things that I thought that I would, because I was always, I'll have to be working or whatever the case is. And all that, the hobby stuff would be hobbies and it wouldn't come into my work. Whereas now, I know that the podcast is my outlet for creativity, but I learned so much along the way that helps me in my consulting. It helps me in all the many facets of my life, but that every single person has. And I think that's been a real big realization the last probably, building the business, but also since COVID, it's like thinking about those things. Oh, what do I really love? What really fills me up? And they are things you can get paid to do, right? And sometimes they're not, but they feed in to the things that then make, you work better or you be a better, whatever the case is. I think that's really key to really embrace as we move into this next phase, because there's going to be so many people thinking about where they go, what they want to do, but really thinking about those skills that you do have and that you don't have to be everything to everyone is really important.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think actually for engineers, they do need an artistic bent, because you're doing very creative work. You're doing very specific work, but it doesn't mean you can't do it with flair and creativity. I'm delighted to see you nurturing your artistic side of your personality. So I don't ever suppress it, is my opinion. And to all engineers out there, don't. You need the yin and yang of the very rigid to the very expressive side of your personality. So, yeah, and as you mentioned, like where people are going to go, I think I was reading yesterday, there's a great exodus of jobs going to happen, because we, of course, can now work from anywhere, which you and I have been fortunate to do in the work that we do. I'm not office bound the whole time. So,
yeah, it's so true. I'm just picking up on, I know we're talking about engineering and I obviously have a bias towards it, but thinking about changing that narrative, because, I just spoke about the engineer that I thought an engineer was, which is actually that's not the right definition for an engineer. It's just what I thought it was. So that I thought I had to be that. We can change the narrative. And I think it's not just engineering, but around STEM and all those things, like exactly what you were talking about earlier. You don't have to be that technical. I know the numbers or the code, because we need so many of those other people involved in that. But also, if you are that technical person, you don't just have to be the numbers and the code, and bringing that creativity really then opens up a whole new world of opportunity. You don't have to wait for the creative person to come in. You can really bring that in. And I think I'm hoping we're going to see more and more of that, not just younger people coming through, but coming through the system. They're being shaped right now by what's happening with COVID, but also before that, it's realizing they've got a voice. They can use different channels to do that. And then how do we feed that into the work that we do so we can really have some purpose? I think it's really key.
Looking at kids, this happens to be a passion of mine that I go on about. And I've spoken to a few guests on my podcast. Dr. Amanda Capels is the lead scientist for Victoria. And I suggested to her before she ever retires, she should make maths compulsory at school, because I don't think, when you're going through school, and I don't blame kids for doing this, they want the easy way. Maths takes a little bit of practice and a little bit of focus. You need to sit down and apply yourself. But I think it's not a brain thing. It's just you have to practice. You practice it and you get better at it. And I look at girls, and I look at, as an example of you, of an engineer, and then you've got other engineers that are working in different fields of it. And I wish all these women would get together and make a video and show it to young girls, and going, open your mind of the possibilities that's out there in the world for you, because you've got so many choices, career choices that you can do when you have STEM as a basis. And nothing to say humanities. I'm not dissing humanities. I think they're extremely important, but you need the STEM background. You can't you can very difficultly from a humanities flick to STEM, but from STEM, you can flick to humanities very easily, if you decide, okay, this is in my career that I want to do. So
you can take skills with you too, then, as well.
Yes. And yeah. I look at girls especially, and I go, having said that, I'm a fiercely independent woman, but I look at them and I go, have a career where you can look after yourself. You've got financial independence. It makes a huge difference when you can make decisions that you're going, I've got the capabilities of doing things because I can look after myself, and I can look after my kids if I need to.
Mm-hmm. So true. Okay, now I feel like I've talked a lot about me.
Lovely. This is the hazard of having another podcaster on your podcast. The tables will be turned quickly.
Yes, very sneakily. Okay, so during COVID, has your business really has it changed? Like, what are some of the surprising things? There's probably some obvious things like, oh, okay, well, we're thinking more about the telepresence and that type of thing. But you had this business before COVID. What are some of those things that, one, have changed that didn't surprise you, but two, some things that have changed that have surprised you?
Okay, so I think the first thing that really surprised me is the uptake of telepresence robots during COVID, which I thought would have just been off the scale. And ironically, it wasn't. And I think what's happened to people is all companies, because I deal predominantly with companies, some private individuals, but, mostly these are corporates that invest in this technology, is that they went down to let's button down the hatch, no spending, let's see, because of course everyone's bottom line has been impacted. And I think technology such as mine is seen as an add-on, which I think is completely crazy. I would just go, this is where you should be investing in it. So that has been a little bit of a surprise to me. But speaking broadly, before COVID, is just the uptake generally, Zoe. It's becoming, more accepted now that this technology is here to stay. When I talk to people about it, I mean, obviously, I still have people who know absolutely nothing about it, and why shouldn't they? I deal with this every day. This is what I do. But for some people, it is, and I see it as an education process. All robotics, automation that you're talking to people, I think people that working in the industry, it's our responsibility to do it as best we can to educate people about the usefulness of it, that it can actually improve your bottom line, that this fallacy that, oh, if you automate, this is the worst thing that you can do. This is absolutely just nonsense. And there are lots of papers written now about it to say, and to prove, in fact, if you automate, everything just improves from then, because you can upskill people, your turnover increases, you can employ more people. So there's a positive to it as well that I actually like talking about it and telling people, no, you have to look at it from this point of view. Yeah, sure, there will be jobs lost, but you can upskill these people, and it's not overnight. It's not, people know about this coming. The word disruption, this dreadful word, there will be changes. I don't call it disruption, I call it changes. And there's always changes every day. We face with changes in our world.
Yeah, and I think it's the right tools for the job, and automating the right tools, the right processes for the task at hand. And like you said, really thinking about those things now, the strategic, I guess, the direction of why we're doing certain things. And that goes to not just automation, but anything, any application of technology. What's the point of this and why we're doing it? Is it improving quality of life? Is it, making things more efficient, more effective to provide services? Or, is it making things safer, etc.? And I think if we can ask it like that, and then we know that we've got these tools and technologies available that we can see if that helps us, then we can start to make decisions in a better way. Because if we only think about the technology, or and also it's, easier said than done, but not just thinking about the problems we have right at this moment, but what are the future problems that may be created based on what we're doing now, climate change being a huge one like that.
I am.
But I just think, your point is, people get worried about advanced technology, or that we don't need that. But I think sometimes we forget how much our world is built on that, and has been for a very long time. And if we don't understand it, or we don't get involved in trying to make decisions and shaping it, then the future won't look like the one that we want in our head. It will look very different, because we weren't involved when we had the opportunity to shape these things. If
you look at it from the most basic, our phone use, Zoe, that's where, that's another bugbear of mine. When I see mothers with young, newborn babies walking with phones in their hand, I have to restrain myself from actually knocking the phone out of their hand. And, because you're saying to your child, actually, the phone is more important than you. Put your phone away. But this has become a way of life for us, and I don't actually think a good way of life. And my sons will be the first, when they listen to this episode, to pull me up very smartly, having said that they are adults at this point in time. But I think with all technology, you need to be aware of the technology. You need to be aware of how you can use it, and then the detriment to it. And I think, as with everything, I see Facebook is now going to be renamed into something else. It's probably a bit of a PRO exercise. All these platforms, social media platforms, how do we engage in it? What direction do you as a parent give your child? How are you behaving yourself as an adult? And what example are you to others? So this is all technology that's influencing our world and the way we see it and our views on it. So, yes, I don't know. I don't know if there's going to be a school of that you go, now listen, children, sit down. This is what you need to do, because it doesn't seem to me that they like really good guidelines in terms of stay off your phone. I see China has now got something that I think I saw out that the gaming is now being put down to 3 hours a week. Like they've just chopped out all the game playing that kids can do. It really is actually detrimental to sit on your phone the whole day. Like I can see it for myself because I use it for work, but then of course I get distracted, and who wouldn't? Like another human being can never compete with a phone because there's just so many interesting things on it. And yes, I'm sort of listening, but I'm not listening, like put your phone down, put it away, put it off, have days over the weekends that you actually you don't look at your phone. And I'm actually getting really good at it now over weekends, that I can just put my phone down and I leave it.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting, like an interesting experiment that I did is I turned my phone off on black and white mode, so it made it less interesting. But as much as that was fine, it's a brain thing. Like it's me going, well, I'm looking at this. I know not that I shouldn't be, because I also think that it's about optimizing it for your lifestyle and what you need to do and how you can be effective and efficient. But for me, it's very much around turning notifications off. I only have very specific notifications on that I need. But it's a test and try thing, right? I try certain things and then I move on to other things. But when I go overseas, which seems weird because we don't do that anymore, not having data is a real behavior change thing. And so, you're not watching videos. You're very, very, intentional about when you're on the phone, because you're chewing up those 500 megabytes of data that you've got, or 1 gig or whatever. Yeah. And those things come back with you when you first re-enter Australia as well, even though you've got your 100 gig or whatever. But that behavior change is really interesting, and it's about being much more intentional. So for me, I'm not like I should or shouldn't. I'm what am I going to do that's intentional today? And I delete certain apps off my phone that I don't go on, that I have to type into the browser. Yes, it's a clunkier experience, but that's better because then it makes it less easy for me. So it's about thinking about those type of things and what works for you in your life as well. And particularly around like people being less important than the phone, I think, that's something that we want to shift and change. And potentially after COVID, and I mean, even during COVID, we're still in COVID. I don't know why I'm talking about like past tense, but, even for me, digital's been fantastic. It's also been I'm really tired just looking at a computer screen. And also the way that we interact is very different, and it will continue to be. And I feel very blessed to be able to have a role that I can do it virtually, basically, or remotely. But then thinking about, well, then I want to be really intentional when, okay, I've got an in-person coffee. No, I'm not getting my phone out. I'm not checking what the next thing is. I know that I'm going to be there. So I think we're going to start questioning, we're going to start shifting, we're going to start hopefully, or not even start. I think people are already doing this. Like we're talking about stuff that people have worked out and they've changed their behaviors, but it is really about changing our behaviors and wanting to really, and making decisions. So you start, and I know I'm just rambling now, but the tool element of technology is so key. You don't like carry around a hammer just in case you need to use it, right? You pick it up when you have a nail.
Listen, I hear what you're saying, and I think the very important thing is when you're trying to change your behavior is to remember when you're trying to stay off your phone is have other things lined up to do, because I get off my phone, and because as I mentioned, I've just moved, so I've been very busy researching things, and now suddenly I've got this gap and I'm going, now I just automatically reach my phone. I don't know why I'm reaching for my phone. I've got all my stuff sorted out. Like I did it once and it's sorted. So what am I replacing my phone time with? So unfortunately for us, the libraries have been a little bit in lockdown and I don't buy any books anymore. So the libraries have opened up now, the gyms have opened up. So it's being intentional. That's the word you use. You have to be intentional about your life, because you blink and your day is gone and you go, and what did I do today? I sat on Instagram WhatsApp and all these other media. And what value, I always say to my son, and I apply this whole lecture to myself, is what value are you adding to your day, and what value are you adding to the world out there? Like, it's not just what can you get, like you also have to put back. So these are, of course, questions. So not just a smart city, but become a smart person. And I'm not talking about like you have to have an IQ of like a zillion. Just how are you managing your day that you have got the most positive impact out there?
Mm-hmm. I feel like we could talk for a long time, and I think like you said, there's both the positives and negatives of technology and of this exact same piece of technology, and for different people as well, having an impact on the world can be done through social media, but also then thinking, but it's all about that intentional use of our time and resources and of other people's time and resources as well. But we've got to move on. We've got to zoom to the future now. What are the emerging trends that people aren't talking about enough?
Look, I think robotics, certainly in Australia, like our adoption rate here isn't great. And I think maybe talking, another word for not using enough. So, robotics and how it's going to impact us. The drone technology, I know up in Queensland, I just can't remember which suburb it is, but they're already using drones to deliver stuff. So, and I think,
Logan.
I've been watching that. And I really think what we're not talking about is the positive impact. When you pick up a newspaper, it goes, by 2024, like 4,000 jobs are going to be, I don't know where they get these stats from, and I think I've spoken to many a presenter who said to me, listen, there's nothing more embarrassing than going on stage and having your statement that you made in 2019 about what's going to happen in 2021 brought up, and it's completely wrong. So I think what's not spoken about is that, of course, there's positive impact as well. AI and where that's going, just in particular in my fields, like that's a bit scary. I'm happy to see that Australia is taking that far more seriously. CSIRO is, at the time of us having our chat now, getting an office set up for a national office or national centre for AI for Australia, which is absolutely fantastic. So I think there's room for a lot more discussions and collaboration, and that's the way forward. Again, with all stakeholders involved in it, like whether smart city, robotics, AI, everyone involved in this is getting them all together.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for that. So much in there, and I think it's going to be interesting even just to look 2023, what's changed in 2021 and how we're going to move and what conversations we're having then, because I know I've had my conversations in 2018 when we started the podcast are very different to the ones now. Some very similar themes, but some that are just wildly different of what we thought was going to happen. And even this question, how people answer it too, which is really interesting.
You can have a collaboration, Zoe, going forward. All the answers of your 200 plus guests, here all the answers and see like what's the trend.
We have done some bit of analytics on it, and we're going to put it all together for our 100,000 episode party this year, whenever it was. Last year. It was last year.
Yeah.
It was this time last year. Crazy. Anyway, but to put that much audio together was days of content. But anyway, enough about me. Nicci, it's been so great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for having this conversation with me. I've really enjoyed it for a Friday morning. And yeah, I really hope that we can have another conversation in person real soon, if the borders allow us to. And yeah, thanks again for coming onto the podcast.
It's a great pleasure, Zoe, and I look forward to we'll have our chat offline about the conference, and maybe sooner than you think.
Okay, sounds good. Now, one last question. How can people connect with you?
Listen, go to LinkedIn. You'll find me, Nicci Rossouw. You'll see podcasts and all sorts of things. Follow me, listen to the podcast if you're into robotics. As I mentioned, this robotics community is absolutely, absolutely amazing. And if you want to take it from there, just drop me a line on the LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on it, and we can pick up a conversation from there.
Sounds good. Well, we'll put the link in the show notes so people can click away and find you. Thank you again for coming onto the Smart Community Podcast, and I look forward to talking soon.
Thanks, Zoe.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Are you looking for an engaging speaker, MC, or facilitator for your next big event? Then we've got you covered. Zoe is a go-to speaker, MC, and conversation facilitator with a difference. She's a master at simplifying the complex and making connections you might never see. Book Zoe for your next event. Email hello@mysmart.community or head over to her speaker page, www.mysmart.community/speaking.
Thanks so much for listening to the Smart Community Podcast. Show notes for this episode and all other episodes are available on our website, mysmart.community/podcast. If you have any questions for us or any of our guests, you can email hello@mysmart.community. You can also find us on the socials. We are on LinkedIn and Twitter @SmartComHQ. That's com with 2 M's. If you are enjoying the podcast, please hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. And we would love for you to leave us a rating and review at wherever you listen. This really helps us reach more ears and eyes, so thank you for your support. As always, we hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed making it.
The Smart Community Podcast is what you're looking for.